Rebel forces are advancing in the Democratic Republic of Congo despite calls for regional leaders to stop the fighting. Forces from the M23 rebel group are closing in on the eastern town of Bukavu and pushing into South Kivu province. The insurgents previously seized the strategic city of Goma with support from troops from neighbouring Rwanda. Thousands have been killed and huge numbers displaced in the region. The leaders of Congo and Rwanda are both due to join crisis talks this weekend.
The rebel advance toward Bukavu is already unsettling local residents. Daily life is being disrupted, with some essential services in disarray.
Schools are closing, markets are shutting down, and many merchants are beginning to move their goods out. There is fear of fighting and fear that normal life in Bukavu may collapse. This is a strong message that we're getting.
The situation here is very tense. You can already see people are starting to flee.
Regional leaders gathered in Tanzania to discuss the conflict.
For the next 2 days should yield very tangible and progressive solutions with clear deliverables and associated implementation plans.
Rwanda has long been accused of supporting the M23 rebels, though it has consistently denied doing so. The United Nations has warned that the fighting could escalate into a larger regional conflict, dragging in not only Rwanda, but near neighbors such as Uganda.
Well, for more on this, we can talk to Raymond Mujuni. He is the Deputy Executive Director of the African Institute for Investigative Journalism in Uganda. Great to have you on the show. So, regional leaders, including both the Rwandan and Congolese presidents, will be at the summit in Tanzania to discuss the ongoing rebel offensive. Do you expect much to come out of it?
It's a highly billed event. We already know, for example, that the Congolese president will not be showing up. He's just sent the prime minister instead. Of course, the SADC and the East African community have not met over the DRC question. But the biggest question on the table is how is peace restored into the Eastern DRC? And will the resolutions of that summit be binding on the Democratic Republic of Congo, which belongs to both the East African bloc and the South African bloc? We already understand also that governments of Uganda and Rwanda have expressed concern over the fact that any escalation of violence in the Eastern DRC will have consequences in terms of refugees crossing over into their territory. So, yes, we are yet to see that.
Well, Congo is calling for sanctions against Rwanda, but the international community hasn't responded. Why is that?
Well, it's a very complex scenario. First of all, Goma, where the fighting is taking place, is just a kilometer away from Rwanda's border. But Goma is almost 2,500 kilometers away from the capital in Kinshasa. There are many problems within the Eastern DRC. One of those problems being that the people who committed the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994 are also stationed in the Eastern DRC. So it's a very complex scenario, and many regional leaders understand the complex scenario because the border demarcations do not actually represent very perfectly what's happening in the Eastern DRC.
In your opinion, what could be a path to peace?
So the quickest path to peace is having a stable state and very present DRC state within the Eastern DRC. We've seen very little fissures of that. In terms of deployment of security, there are almost 100 rebel groups operating in the Eastern DRC. In terms of mining and corporate interests in the Eastern DRC, there's very little in terms of state presence there. So one of the quickest ways is to have a stable DRC state in the Eastern DRC. But for that to happen, you first of all must beat back all the rebel groups that are operating in the Eastern DRC, or in any case, form a coalition of them. Now, both Uganda and Rwanda, which sit closer to the Eastern DRC, just 3 decades ago had their own civil wars. And the quickest way to end those civil wars was to have negotiated settlements in which fighting groups were encapsulated into government, and therefore the path to peace was found. So we also understand that's one of the things that will be suggested in the ESC SADC summit today, which is that the M23 and the Alliance Fleuve de Congo should have talks with the Kinshasa government and be reintegrated into government so that there can be a path, quick pace in the Eastern DRC.
Thanks, Raymond. Raymond Mujuni from the African Institute for Investigative Journalism in Uganda.